And welcome back to Rise and Shine. This is Ability Connection Colorado's podcast. My name is Jared, and earlier this week, we spoke to Robert Eldridge. He is the primary caregiver to his wife, who has Huntington's disease. He'll talk about more about what that is and what it's meant for he and their family. Incredible conversation with a man who's altogether inspiring, informative, warm, and somehow all that wrapped in a package of stoicism, or so it at least appears. So that's coming up shortly. I just want to tell you that today's episode brought to you by our very own Colorado Concours d'Elegance and Exotic Sports Car Show, the 42nd year, because this event keeps bringing back people. What, last year, 14,000 plus volunteers and attendees, bringing back people to support our creative options for early childhood education. And you can sign up to show your own car. You could be a sponsor with all those people. That's a good idea. And to show the community how you support it. And you can just buy your discounted tickets at coloradoconcours.org. And now let's get started with, something that very near and dear to Ability Connection Colorado, as many of our programs are started by caregivers like Mr. Robert Eldridge. I was going through some photos that you sent, Robert, and I think this is, I guess this is where we start, huh? In the beginning.
I met my wife back in 2001, shortly before 9/11. And we, cultivated, curated a relationship around that time. And the nice thing about it is, we hit it off, and we hit it off in several ways. And I can remember, conversations, when things were getting a little serious. She told me, a brief synopsis about her family history, and she mentioned Huntington's disease, and she mentioned information about, her late father. And, at that time, 25 odd years ago, I didn't know what it was,
Right. I mean, you're young, you're in love. You're like, well, nothing's going to stop us. We're good. I'm not thinking about these things.
And, I did, some tepid research at the time about it. But obviously, 20, 25 years ago, the resources, we had, basic Google and whatnot. It's not until as of recently, or, maybe 10 years ago, that I started to grasp, the nature of the disease when she was first diagnosed. And, and what I have found and what I've heard from other descriptions and what the disease is, I'll use familiar diseases that some people are interested or actually know about. For example, if you were to describe Huntington's disease to somebody, I would say it's a cross between MS, Alzheimer's, and ALS.
That's
three.
A potent mix.
It is. And that's a great description because it manifests all those characteristics of the disease. And it's incurable. It has, various stages, from the very beginning stages. And then, my wife, just to give some insight, she's in mid to late stage. And the final stage is where there is no ability to talk, walk, you're basically bedridden, and, communication is very nil.
And I don't know, this might just be more gratuitous than informational, but when did she notice things? When there's like I'm thinking of two phases in your life, and maybe I'm making these up, but one is that you notice that it's happening, and two, you realize this is going to be life.
First time I noticed it was just shortly after my son was born, and he's 17 now. I started to see some of the, the symptoms, and I didn't think anything of it, but in retrospect, I saw those things happen. And then when we were going to get the official diagnoses, I just knew then and there, that our life is going to be different. It's not going to be better, but for better, for worse, in essence, the vows that, we take. And it can be challenging. It can be extremely challenging because, prior to this, we would go mountain biking. We go to wine tastings. We would just do anything like what any couple would do. Go to like sports events, the normal things that we cherish, those memories that, that no one can take away from us. But, at that point, it was a gradual, you know, degradation of, that sender receiver fervor communication to interactions to every part of um, our lives.
I want to know about what you've done. I want to know about what your wife has done, how you've worked together, maybe resources you've discovered, this journey. But before we get there, who is Robert Eldridge? How should people know you?
I That's a great question. From my avocation standpoint, I've self-described myself as the eclectic and mental guitarist, and I put out a CD back in 2004, affectionately titled "Eclectic and Mental Guitar Music Volumes 1 and 2." Um,
Okay, mental guitar. Well, it almost sounds like you're doing this telepathically. So what what is a mental guitar?
Well, it's a when you hear the word mental, it conjures up a lot of things, just like as you just pointed out. Mental, it is very thought provoking, very emotive, and that's just how my music is. And I throw in the eclectic thing because I'm not. I'm not a blues guitarist. I'm not a jazz guitarist. I'm not a classical guitarist. I'm not a rock guitarist, but it's all encompassing.
Will some of this music that you play, do you think it'll work well to this interview? I could put some tracks underneath here.
Oh, I for shameless PR, yes, it's all instrumental
Well,
music.
as a production guy, I love having access to music. So I look forward to seeing how this works.
You're welcome to get anything from any of the online sources.
Okay, so we've got avocation and now vocation.
Vocation is another passionate part of me, as well as music. I've first got my Series 7 license to become a, registered rep back in 90, I think, 93.
Well, I was told this, Chris Jensen, who introduced us, he said, "Oh, you got to talk to this guy. I mean, he just does so many things. He knows so many things." And then there is this huge part of you. I can't imagine, like, if there was a Robert Eldridge pie chart, the caretaking part is probably a big chunk now. I mean,
Yeah,
well,
it is. It
I don't
is.
know, 75%. I don't know how much that is, but that's who is that. Is that who you are now?
Yes, it is. And I wear it with a badge of honor because one thing about being caretaker, it has actually humbled me.
Yeah.
It's actually made me look at the world to see that when I see people in various positions that are, you know, complaining, and I look at my wife every morning when she wakes up, she has a smile on her face, and it's incredible.
Mhm.
And I look at her and looking at her in her position, and when people are like going off on a rant and whatnot, and even I do that.
Mhm.
I say to myself, we each, have our own degree of pain and suffering, and no one's pain is no more better or different than the other person's pain or suffering.
Mhm.
And with her, it's just as a caretaker, it's made me look at life a whole lot differently than I was prior to being a caretaker.
And how is that?
Um, it's just made me look at things as if you know she is going through this, you know, with cognition or without cognition, and she's able to cope with it. It may have a lot to do with the stages she's in or the medicine she's taking, but overall, she is embracing this with the utmost, you know, strength,
Yeah.
that I could not ever imagine in, just various things that, we do throughout the day, and say, and just, for example, um, communication's somewhat difficult now, but, you know, we, we celebrate certain wins,
Yeah.
like, she's able to swallow something, she's able to pick up her comb or pick up her phone, or she is trying to scroll around on social media and she's not able to do like a little point on the like because of her dexterity, but occasionally she does.
Yeah.
And it's great and we celebrate it. I go, "Yay."
Yeah. She
and
can
and
prove that she's not a robot. That's a big
it,
celebration for humankind.
absolutely. And we just celebrate, the really positive things and the independence that she, so desperately holds on to right now.
By the way, I just thought of a title track to your next album. It's called Embracing Gracefully. So I don't know if go ahead and run with that. I feel it. I haven't even heard your guitar playing, but I feel a
Or
Robert
that
Eldridge magic moment.
that could be a composition I could write.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. No pressure. Uh, is there, that's a pretty rosy picture. Is there anger?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because in the early stages when she was first diagnosed, there is a portion of the disease where you go through a fit of rage. And it's difficult for a lot of caregivers to understand that because as a husband, um, that rage is really brutal. For example, um, in the early stages, we went through two televisions, a glass table, where the rage that my wife manifested within her, and she has no way to control it. It's just part of the disease and the degeneration of the brain, and that part of the brain that elicits rage, where it's more amplified and pronounced. And various things can trigger things like that. In the early days when we were trying to take her medicine, she would get upset, and one time she would she raised her hands and broke our glass kitchen table. She hit our television and things. And those are things that you know had I not known what the disease is, you tend to be in a position where you get angry, but
Yeah.
you can't get angry because that's just part of the disease itself. And that is a part of the disease that a lot of people don't understand, especially for those who really haven't done their homework to understand the disease being a caretaker.
So you really have to beef up the cognitive part of your brain, like more than anyone or any other version of you. You have to have the information to inform your emotions. This is the disease.
Yes. In the early stages of the early days and stages of disease, it was difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's difficult, and nowadays, I'm not saying I am resistant to it, but I'm more empathetic and I'm able to control, my emotions.
What is the what is the smart thing that a caretaker can do? Is there some broad stroke on that, or is it just little things all the time?
I'm going to go with the little things all the time, and then I'm going to say each person's different.
Hmm.
It depends on their background. It depends on, what makes them tick. And there's no cookie cutter way to say, advice I can give other than the fact is, I tell, be mindful, 2 words, be mindful.
When you go home, and I mean, what is your day like? Is it nonstop?
In the beginning, it was nonstop,
Yeah.
and now that I'm an independent advisor, um, it's easy for me to navigate my day. Just to take you through my typical day. I'm up at 4 a.m. I grab my coffee, I swap between coffee and tea, just to, kind of shock the body
Mm-hmm.
per se. And I spend at least an hour of just me time, drinking my coffee or tea, doom scrolling a little bit, looking
Mm-hmm.
at, turning on the business news channels to see what the futures are doing. And after that, I start to prepare my day. I prepare my wife's breakfast. A lot of her foods have to be pureed because the nerve endings of her ability to chew are starting to degrade. Therefore, her food has to be specially prepared. Then I prepare my son's food, and then I go through the motions. Um, Prepare my wife's coffee. I get on my little um, announcing thing in my place, and I, tell my wife ahead of time I'm coming up there with her coffee, and that's her. That's her coffee. To her is like Christmas every day. She she loves coffee, so I bring her coffee up to her. I get her out of the bed. She has a smile on her face, and she has to have her three things near her. She has to have her brush, she has to have her phone, and she has to have her water. And it's kind of an obsessive compulsive sort of thing, but it's cute. So I get her up, put a new pull up on her, get her back to the bed, go downstairs, finish fixing her breakfast, bring her breakfast to bed, and I sit on the side of the bed with her breakfast that's pureed, that she's able to eat so she doesn't choke. And after we do that, we do a second session in the restroom. I get her dressed, put her on her gait belt, take her downstairs, and get the couch ready with her pads and everything. And I put her on her favorite news channel. And then I go back upstairs and get my day ready for my vocation. In the meantime, I've made my son's lunch and wished him a well, and he would go off to school. And that's the first part of my day that goes from like 4 a.m. to about 9:30. And typically, my caretaker, when she comes at 9:30.
That was just a descriptive symphony, Dad. I could just see you moving around the house doing this, and wow, your wife is a genius because she did that thing that every wife needs to do is keep it simple for the husband. I mean, honey, brush, water, phone. Okay, this is what I need.
And she has to have it.
Yeah.
I'll get a hint of those little fits of rage, so I have to make sure. And we get downstairs, she has to have her brush, phone, and water right next to her.
Although
It's
leaving her in front of the news does sound like that could be torture, but if that's what she's preferring, then good work.
and I'm weaning her from it because when I'm in between, working, I come downstairs and I'll go, "Hey, you want to watch our show?" So we'll flip it on Netflix or whatever, or whatever movie service, and we'll watch her show.
Okay, what
And
does she recommend right now? What is for watching? I mean, there's a lot of shows out there.
we've been watching, a lot of and she's not able to articulate it, but what I'll do is I'll just go through the previews, and I said, "Do you like it?" And she'll say yay or nay, and I say, "Raise your hand for yes," and she raises. She goes like that, and
Yeah,
sometimes she'll raise two hands, for yes.
total score. Yeah.
So we've watched one really intense one called Adolescent on
Oh,
Netflix.
oh my gosh.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it's intense.
One
And
camera shot for each episode. Are you kidding me?
yes, episode 3. That
Yeah.
kid is only. It was his first take for his first acting gig.
Unbelievable.
Yes,
Yeah, because
so
that's when he's in the count with the counselor, right?
yes,
Oh
yes,
man,
yes. That was incredible. If he does not win some sort of award for that
everything.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we watched that, and she, she loved it. She's not able to say, but I say, do you like it? I'll kind of look over to you. You like it? And she'll just muttered like, yeah,
Yeah.
like something like that. So, and we both enjoyed it. It was pretty intense.
Yeah, it
So
is. It is very. I kind of was sad. I was watching it. I was like, "Why am I doing this to myself?" But it's you can't pull away. You just can't.
yes, it's
Yeah,
riveting, if
yeah,
anything, and and it's also enlightening. That it just showcased. It kind of scared me. I said, "Gosh, is
it's
this what
scary.
high school's like?"
Yeah, no, it's frightening. In that weird parental concern way.
Yes, it is.
When I've seen photos of your wife. I've read about her. This is an attractive, brilliant woman. And is she mad?
You know, she's not because I continuously ask her, are you happy? Like we'll do some things, and every once in a while, I make it a rule if it's like over 70 degrees, we'll go to her favorite coffee shop, and and then I'll say, "Are you happy?" And she goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and in the times where I really can't see when she's not unhappy, and that's the beauty behind it. Like I said, in that early stage of Huntington's, that rage phase, it was hard to decipher, her happiness, but she seems to be, all the cues. Like there's certain days where she'll say something, I'm not able to. Uh, Sound it out, and we have a little sheet that has letters and little pictures, but every once in a while I can decipher a word. And like one day she was saying go, and I go, do you want to go out? And she says, yeah, yeah. And I said, and I go, what? And she goes, cough. I go, coffee. I said, okay.
Yeah.
I said, I go, I said, I'm sorry to upset you, but we can't can't do that today. But I try to make sure I cultivate her
You have
happiness.
one job, Robert. Go get the coffee. What's going on here? I'm
Uh
mad for
huh.
your wife. Is it
Indeed.
I feel weird talking about her.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's what we're here about. Just to bring awareness.
Yeah.
In essence, and you know, if I were to ask her, even if she was not cognizant, she would not want to do it because she's very private and keeps to herself. And but she does, you know, you know, even though she's not able to articulate, she knows what she wants, and I'd like to, obviously always respect that, when it comes to it. Um, and it's interesting. I'm the outgoing, a person that speaks a lot, talks a lot.
Goes on our
My
podcast, and I appreciate that. But yeah,
but my wife, she's very reserved and quiet. I came from a family of yellers. It's like my sisters, we would yell at each other. If someone's down, we yell, and it was like almost a term of endearment. It wasn't like to you know be angry at each other. And one thing with my wife, when we first met and started dating, I was in that yeller sort of scenario, and it may have intimidated her because she's the reserved, quiet type. I'm the yeller,
are you
boisterous type.
celebrating things? Are you like William Wallace? Like, why are you yelling? Like, I'm that guy too. I'm the loud guy. But
Yes. But I think it's, I don't think, after 20 some, almost 25 years, you know, uh, we've made it work no matter what.
is she? Um, does she communicate to you, or has she maybe in the early stages of Huntington's that, dang it, Robert, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a mother, I'm a professional. I'm not a Huntington disease patient. Like, was she angry that this might be defining her?
Yes, yes. And it's interesting you said that. She was in a state of denial. She did not even like um, the fact of mentioning it and or letting people know. Um, she was, it's even when she was being first diagnosed, she was in denial.
Yeah.
And when we were in the consult with the neurologist, she basically, you know, told the neurologist no, she didn't have it. And it was a really roadblock of resistance.
Well, there's this big question for people like you, the caregivers. Are you taking care of yourself, and how?
You know what? That's probably the um, FAQ that everyone, including yourself, ask me. And I'm going to say, I'll be honest, I'm doing the best I can. I could do better.
Yeah.
And meaning that, I have, spoken with, individuals and counselors and whatnot, but I think I need to do more of that. I
Well,
need to,
it's hard because I cared for my mother at a pretty young age, and it was such a defining role. Provided so much purpose, and I loved winning those little goals that you talked about earlier. That for me was my care. That's how I was thriving. Is that, oh my god, I'm caring for this human who used to care for me. A little weird, but we're doing things like, we're learning together. We're frustrated together. We're growing together. You were able to walk a little bit today, like, and I know I could see why the caregivers often care the least for themselves, because internally, I think there's so many little victories that you might overlook something else you might need.
yeah, you've nailed it. It is exactly like that. And I know I need to do that, but um, we're at a point that we want to make sure as caregivers that we can do everything and that it's humanly possible to make their life comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's going to be a time where you want to be able to look back and know that you did, and I think you did.
Thank you. I hope so. I hope so.
I'm sorry, I get teary-eyed easily, mostly because I have dry eye, and so they
Y-
block, like, the drainage here, so it maintains tears, and people think I'm crying a lot, but it is evident when I talk to people about these things. I'm just soft. I am sensitive.
You're human. It's all
Yeah.
good.
What would she want us to do, with what would she want us to do that maybe she can't do right now?
Oh, that's a tough question. The first thing I think of,
Because I could drink coffee with the best of them. I got your wife on that.
she has basically fell in love with Snoopy. On her Facebook page,
Yeah.
it's like she'll go like, and I'll go, "What are you looking at?" And it's like a meme of Snoopy or like a group. And I said, "Do you want me to love it?" Which I'll tap on the screen. I said, "Okay, I loved it for you," and she starts to smile, and because she's not able to scroll really fluidly, but every once in a while she scrolls. And um, the fact that she still has joy with certain things in life. And the first thing I thought about was, the Charles Schultz character Snoopy. So,
Yeah.
and I mentioned that
Brilliant.
online, and somebody like sent her a Snoopy blanket. Someone sent her some Snoopy socks, and I, uh, I, I put it on her, and she's just so happy. I said, "Do you like your Snoopy socks? Do you like her?" So you know the simple thing of that she can still experience joy.